The alarm system screamed across the orbital defense station. Captain Taeyang ran to the main screen, his heart pounding in his chest. What he saw made his blood turn cold. Ships. Thousands of them. More ships than he had ever seen in his entire life. They appeared at the edge of the solar system like a dark cloud blocking out the stars. "Get me a count," Taeyang ordered. His voice steady, despite the fear growing in his stomach. The young officer at the scanner station looked up, his face pale. "Sir, we're detecting over 10,000 vessels. Maybe more. The scanners can't count them all. 10,000. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. Earth had only 340 warships. They had spent 20 years building those ships after humanity finally stopped fighting itself and united under one government. 20 years of peace and progress. And now this Admiral Kungsu received the emergency transmission in his office at Earth Defense Headquarters. He was an old man now, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had fought in the last war between nations, back when humans still killed each other over borders and resources. He thought those days were behind them. He was wrong. The message from the alien fleet played on his screen. It showed a creature with 4 arms and dark purple skin. Its voice came through the translator as cold and emotionless. "I am Warlord Thaxron of the Valdris Empire. We have conquered 847 civilizations across 12 sectors of this galaxy. You will surrender within 72 hours. If you resist, we will destroy your world and everyone on it. This is your only warning." The message ended with footage. Burning planets. Cities turned to ash. Millions of bodies floating in space. The Valdris wanted Earth to see what happened to those who said no. Kungsu sat in silence for a long moment. Then he pressed the button to call an emergency meeting of Earth's government. Every leader would need to see this. Every person on Earth would need to know what was coming. In her laboratory deep underground, Dr. Juan was working late when the alert came through. She was studying pieces of alien technology that Earth had recovered from a small ship that crashed in the Pacific Ocean 2 years ago. The aliens hadn't been Valdris. They were refugees running from someone. Now G1 understood who they were running from. She looked at the alien circuits and power systems spread across her workbench. Humanity's technology was like a child's toy compared to this. But in the past 2 years, GON had learned something important. The aliens were more advanced, yes, but they thought differently. They built everything to work together in perfect harmony. It made their systems powerful, but also created a weakness. If you could disrupt that harmony, the whole thing might fall apart. The government council met in the secure bunker beneath Geneva. Minister Hejin stood at the podium, her voice shaking slightly as she spoke. "We must consider surrender. I know how that sounds. I know it feels like giving up. But we're talking about 8 billion lives. If we fight, we all die. If we surrender, at least some of us might survive." Admiral Kungsu stood up slowly. His uniform was perfectly pressed, his medals catching the light. "I've looked at the data on the civilizations the Valdris conquered. Want to know how many of those populations are still alive? None. 0. The Valdris don't take prisoners. They don't make slaves. They take everything useful from a planet, and then they move on. The people they conquer simply disappear." A young captain named Minho raised his hand. He was only 30 years old, part of the new generation that grew up in the unified Earth. "My grandfather told me stories about the old wars. He said humans have a bad habit of surviving things we're not supposed to survive. We've faced extinction before. Disease, war, famine. We're still here. Maybe the Valdris don't know what they're dealing with." The room fell silent. Then, one by one, hands went up for a vote. Every single person voted to fight. Not because they thought they could win. The math was clear. They would lose. But they would lose on their feet, not on their knees. Kungsu returned to his headquarters and immediately called his best officers. Captain Taeyan came down from the orbital station. Lieutenant Sung Ho, the best fighter pilot in the fleet, arrived still wearing his flight suit. Dr. Juwan was pulled from her lab. They gathered around a holographic display showing the Valdris fleet slowly moving toward Earth. "We can't beat them in a straight fight," Kung Su said simply, "so we won't fight straight." "Dr. Jiwan, tell them what you found?" Jiwan stepped forward and activated her own display. It showed the internal structure of the alien technology she'd been studying. All Valdris systems run on a networked architecture. Every ship talks to every other ship constantly. It makes them incredibly coordinated. They can act like one giant organism instead of thousands of individual ships, but that's also their weakness. If we can get into that network, we might be able to cause chaos. Sung Ho leaned forward. "How do we get into their network?" "We need to physically upload a virus into one of their ships. It has to be done up close, within a few meters. The virus I've designed won't destroy their systems. Instead, it will hide and replicate, spreading through their entire fleet. Then, when we activate it, it will make their systems give false information, wrong coordinates, fake targeting data, confused orders." Tae-Yong crossed his arms. "So, we need someone to fly right up to a Valdris warship, which will be trying to kill them, and upload this virus." "That's a suicide mission," yes, Jiwan said quietly. "It is." Sung Ho smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had just volunteered to die. "I'll do it. Give me 50 pilots who are crazy enough to follow me, and I'll get your virus uploaded." Over the next 60 hours, Earth prepared for war. Factories worked around the clock, building missiles and ammunition. The fleet moved into defensive positions around the planet. Families said goodbye to their loved ones in the military. Everyone knew these might be their last days. On the orbital station, Taeyong watched the Valdris fleet getting closer. They moved in perfect formation. Thousands of ships arranged in geometric patterns. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. He thought about his sister on Earth, his nephew, who was only 5 years old. He thought about all the children who would never grow up if humanity lost this fight. His communications officer interrupted his thoughts. "Sir, we're receiving a wideband transmission from Earth. It's being broadcast to every screen on the planet." Tae-Young switched his display to show the transmission. Admiral Kung Su appeared, standing in front of the United Earth flag. Behind him stood representatives from every nation, every culture, every group of people on Earth. The old man looked directly into the camera and spoke. "People of Earth, in 72 hours, we will face an enemy that has destroyed hundreds of worlds. They think we will be easy to defeat. They think we will break. They're wrong. We are humanity. We have survived ice ages and plagues. We have split the atom and walked on other worlds. We have made beautiful art and terrible weapons. We have loved and hated and dreamed and fought, and we are still here. So let the Valdris come. Let them see what happens when you threaten Earth. We are the line. Behind us is our home, and we will hold." The transmission ended. Across Earth, in homes and shelters and military bases, people stood a little straighter. They were afraid, but they were also angry, and they were ready. The countdown had begun. Lieutenant Sung Ho checked his fighter one last time. The small spacecraft was loaded with enough explosives to take out a city block. But against a Valdris warship, it would barely scratch the paint. That wasn't the point, though. Hidden in the fighter's computer system was Dr. Jiwan's virus, compressed into a single data packet. All he had to do was get close enough to upload it. "All pilots, listen up," Sung Ho said over the squadron channel. 49 other fighters floated in formation around him. 50 total. 50 pilots who knew they weren't coming back. "We're not here to win a fight. We're here to deliver a package. Fly fast, fly crazy, and get as close as you can before they blow you apart. Earth is counting on us. Sir, what if we actually survive this?" Asked a young pilot named Bura. She was only 22, fresh out of the academy. Sung Ho laughed. "Then we'll have a great story to tell. But don't count on it. All ships, engage engines. Let's go make some noise." The 50 fighters screamed away from the human defensive line, heading straight toward the massive Valdris fleet. On the flagship of the alien armada, Warlord Thaxron watched the small ships approaching. His forearms crossed in what might have been amusement. 50 small craft against 10,000 warships, he said to his officers. These humans are either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Should we engage them, Warlord? Asked the weapons officer. Let them come. Show them what happens when insects attack a mountain. The human fighters entered range of the Valdris weapons. Space lit up with energy beams and missiles. The first fighter exploded within seconds, then another, then 3 more. The Valdris defense systems were perfect, tracking and destroying the small human ships with mechanical precision. Sung Ho wove through the fire, his hands dancing across the controls. He'd been flying since he was 16. He knew every trick, every move that could buy him 1 more second of life. 20 fighters left. Then 15. Biora's ship took a hit that sheared off her left wing, but she kept flying, kept pushing forward. 10 fighters left. Sung Ho saw his target, a massive Valdris battlecruiser, sitting in the center of their formation. He armed the upload sequence. "This is for Earth," he shouted, and fired every weapon he had at the battlecruiser's shield. The explosions did nothing to the ship's defenses, but they created a brief moment of electromagnetic interference. In that moment, Sung Ho's computer transmitted the virus packet. It slipped through the Valdris shields like a whisper. Then his fighter exploded, torn apart by 3 different weapons hitting it at once. But the virus was already inside the Valdris network, hidden in millions of lines of normal communication data. It began to copy itself, spreading from ship to ship like a silent disease. What the Valdris didn't see was that 13 pilots, including Biora, had ejected from their fighters at the last second. Their tiny escape pods were coated with stealth material that Dr. Juwan had developed from the alien technology. The pods drifted silently through the Valdris formation, too small to detect. Moving on momentum alone, back on Earth, Dr. Jiwon watched the telemetry data streaming from the virus. It was working. The virus was spreading through the Valdris network, but slowly. It needed more time. She calculated they had maybe 20 hours before the Valdris would detect it. "We need to keep them distracted," she told Admiral Kyun-soo. "If they start looking closely at their network traffic, they'll find the virus before it finishes spreading." Kung-soo nodded. "Captain Taeyang, you're up. Time for Phase 2? Taeyang stood on the bridge of his command station and opened a direct channel to the Valdris fleet. His face appeared on every screen in their armada. "Warlord Thaxron, I am Captain Taeyang of the United Earth Defense Force. I want to show you something. I want you to understand what you're fighting." The transmission began to play a history of human warfare. Ancient battles with swords and spears. Medieval sieges that lasted years. The terrible wars of the 20th century with their millions of dead. It showed human soldiers charging into certain death. It showed cities bombed to rubble, but never surrendering. It showed the stubborn, insane, beautiful refusal of humanity to ever give up. "We have been killing each other for thousands of years," Taeyang said calmly. "We are very, very good at it. We have built weapons that can crack planets. We have created diseases that could wipe out all life. We have looked at extinction and said, not today. You think you're the first ones to try to destroy us? You're not even close. So come ahead, Warlord. Let's see which of us is tougher." On the Valdris flagship, Thaxron watched the transmission with growing irritation. Primitive savages trying to scare us with their primitive history. Prepare the fleet for full assault. We attack in 20 hours. I want every human ship destroyed and that planet burning. But some of the younger Valdris officers exchanged worried looks. They had seen the footage. They had watched humans throw themselves into impossible situations and somehow survive. One officer quietly began reviewing the battle plans, looking for weaknesses. In the depths of the Valdris formation, Biora and her fellow survivors drifted in their escape pods. They had turned off everything except life support. No lights. No heat. Just enough air to breathe. Biora activated her specialized equipment and began scanning the Valdris network. She was a communications expert, and Dr. Jiwan had given her a specific task. She needed to map the exact structure of the enemy. fleet's network so the virus could target the most important nodes. Hours passed in cold silence. Biora's fingers flew across her keyboard, breaking through Valdra's encryption and building a complete picture of their systems. It was brilliant technology, she had to admit. Every ship was connected to every other ship. Information flowed like water through channels and nodes. It was efficient and powerful. It was also fragile. One disruption in the right place could cascade through the entire system. She sent her data back to Earth in a tight beam transmission that looked like background radiation. Dr. G1 received it and immediately began updating the virus. Now it knew exactly where to strike. Meanwhile, across Earth, people prepared for the attack. In Seoul, a civilian engineer named Jun Ki broke into an abandoned military depot and started repairing old defense batteries that had been mothballed years ago. In the orbital shipyards, workers welded weapons onto civilian transport ships. If the Valdris got past the military, they would face an entire planet of angry humans with improvised weapons. Captain Venecio commanded a destroyer on the front line. She had positioned her ship behind a dense field of orbital debris, using it as cover. Her crew had spent hours programming their missiles with erratic flight patterns. Valdris point defense systems were designed to track predictable trajectories. Minicio's missiles would fly like drunk bees, impossible to predict. It wouldn't stop the aliens, it might confuse them. With 10 hours left before the Valdris attack, Admiral Kung-Su gathered his commanders for a final briefing. When the attack starts, forget everything you learned in the academy about proper military tactics. We're too weak to fight fair. Use asteroids for cover. Hide behind wrecked ships. Fire your missiles on crazy paths. Ram them if you have to. Make them work for every meter of space they take. Dr. G1 will activate the virus when the moment is right. Until then, we survive. And if the virus doesn't work? Asked one captain. Kung-Su's face was grim. Then we die. But we die fighting, and we take as many of them with us as possible. Future generations need to know we didn't go quietly. The final hours ticked down. Families on Earth held each other. Soldiers checked their weapons one last time. Dr. G1 monitored the virus spreading through the Valdris network. It was at 87% coverage. Almost there. Just a little more time. The Valdris fleet began to move. 2,000 ships broke off from the main formation and accelerated toward Earth. They came in perfect geometric patterns, their weapons charging, their shields at maximum. They looked unstoppable. They looked like the end of the world. On the orbital defense station, Taeyang watched them come. His hand hovered over the emergency alert button. Behind him, his crew worked in tense silence. The main screen showed the countdown. 5 minutes. 4 minutes. 3 minutes, sir, his weapons officer said quietly. It's been an honor serving with you. The honor was mine, Taeyang replied. All stations, battle alert. Here they come. The Valdris fleet entered firing range. 2,000 alien warships opened fire simultaneously. The void of space lit up with enough energy to power a small sun. The first wave of death descended on Earth's defenders, and Admiral Kung-Su whispered into his communicator, Dr. Giwan, activate the virus. Do it now. The virus activated across 2,000 Valdris warships simultaneously. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then chaos erupted on the bridge of a Valdris destroyer. The navigation system suddenly showed the ship was 300 kilometers from its actual position. The pilot corrected course, but the system kept giving wrong information. The ship veered wildly, nearly colliding with 2 other vessels. Across the attacking fleet, similar problems multiplied. Weapon systems locked onto friendly ships. Shield generators received shutdown commands. Communication channels broadcast static and false orders. Captain Jae-hoon commanded Earth's outer defense station. A massive ring of weapons and armor floating at the edge of Earth's gravity well. He watched the Valdris formation fall into disarray and seized the moment. All batteries, fire at will. Target the ships that are out of position. His station's railguns opened up, hurling metal slugs at near-light speed into the confused alien ships. 3 Valdris vessels exploded as the projectiles punched through weakened shields. Jaehoon allowed himself a brief smile. Then 12 Valdris battle cruisers turned their attention to his station. The smile vanished. A brace for impact. He shouted. The alien weapons tore through his station's armor like paper. Explosions ripped through corridors. The artificial gravity failed. Jaehoon watched his crew being sucked out through hull breaches. He grabbed the manual controls and fired every remaining weapon at the nearest Valdris ship. His last act was to aim the dying station at a battlecruiser and engage the emergency thrusters. The station and the alien ship collided in a massive fireball. 3,000 human defenders died. So did 800 Valdris warriors. Admiral Kung-Su saw Jaehoon's sacrifice on his tactical display. The outer station was gone, but it had bought time. All ships, execute guerrilla pattern Delta. Don't fight them straight on. Hit and run. Make them chase you. Captain Minasio's destroyer darted out from behind its asteroid cover, fired a full spread of missiles, then dove back into hiding. The missiles twisted and spun through space, their chaotic flight paths confusing the Valdris point defense. 2 missiles got through, blasting holes in a cruiser's hull. Minacio didn't wait to see the damage. She was already moving to her next position. All along the defensive line, human ships used every trick they could think of. They hid in the shadow of Earth's moon. They used orbital debris as shields. They fired their weapons, then immediately shut down all systems to avoid detection. It was desperate and improvised, and it was working better than anyone expected. The virus had evened the odds just enough to give humanity a chance, but the Valdris were adapting. Warlord Thaxron realized something was wrong with his fleet's systems. All ships switched to manual control. Stop relying on the automated systems. His orders began to spread through the fleet. Ships started fighting more effectively. The chaos began to fade. Inside the Valdris formation, Biora and the other hidden pilots watched this happening. He's shutting down the infected systems, Biora said into her communicator. Dr. G1, the virus is losing effectiveness. We need a new plan. Dr. G1 sat in her underground lab, surrounded by screens showing data from the battle. She was exhausted, having not slept in 48 hours, but her mind was racing. The virus was working, but not well enough. She needed more time to study the Valdris systems, to find another weakness. But there was no more time. Then she saw something in the data. The Valdris ships were switching to manual control, but they still kept one system automated because it was too complex to operate manually. The targeting computer. Every Valdris ship used the same targeting algorithm, and they were all still networked together for that one function. If she could corrupt that algorithm, Biora, I need you to upload a new code packet. I'm sending it now. It will target their weapon systems specifically. Understood. Uploading now. Lieutenant Yongsu commanded a destroyer that had been heavily damaged in the initial exchange. His engines were failing, his weapons were nearly empty, and fires burned in 3 different sections of his ship. He had 2 choices: abandon ship or do something meaningful with what was left. He chose meaningful. All crew, abandon ship now. Get to the escape pods. You have 2 minutes. He waited until the last of his people were off the ship. Then he locked the helm toward a Valdris battlecruiser. The alien ship saw him coming and opened fire, but Yongsu's ship was already dying. What did a few more hits matter? He rammed his destroyer directly into the battlecruiser's engine core. The explosion was visible from Earth, a brief new star in the sky. The battlecruiser broke in half, and Yongsu became a hero whose name would be remembered forever. The battle raged for hours. Earth's orbital space became a graveyard of ships, human and Valdris alike. The once clear view of stars was obscured by debris and flame. Admiral Kung-Su watched his fleet being torn apart. Of the 340 ships that started the battle, fewer than 100 were still fighting. But the Valdris were also paying a heavy price. They had lost hundreds of ships to the virus-induced chaos and the desperate human. Counterattacks, then Bora's second upload took effect. Across the Valdris fleet, targeting computers began to malfunction. Weapons that were aimed at human ships suddenly shifted to target other Valdris vessels. A destroyer fired on its own flagship. A battlecruiser's missiles locked onto friendly frigates. The aliens panicked, shutting down their weapons entirely to prevent fratricide. Now, Kung Su roared. All ships, full offensive. Hit them while their weapons are down. The remaining human fleet charged forward. Captain Sujin's tactical bomber wing, which had been hiding in the shadow of Earth, suddenly appeared and unleashed antimatter torpedoes at the larger Valdris command ships. The torpedoes were humanity's most powerful weapons, each one carrying enough destructive force to vaporize a mountain. For Valdris capital, ships exploded in nuclear fire. For the first time in the battle, the humans were winning. For the first time in decades, the Valdris were losing. Warlord Thaxran stood on his bridge watching his fleet fall apart, felt something he had not experienced in years. Fear, then rage replaced the fear. He slammed his 4 fists on the command console. Enough, deploy the world crackers. If we cannot have this planet intact, then no one will have it at all. The world cracker weapons were the Valdris Empire's ultimate terror weapon. They were massive devices that could destabilize a planet's core, tearing the world apart from the inside. 6 Dreadnought-class ships carried these weapons, and they had been held in reserve for this exact situation. The Dreadnoughts began to power up their terrible cargo. On Earth, Dr. Juwan's scanners detected the massive energy signatures. Her face went pale as she realized what was happening. Admiral, they're preparing planet-killer weapons. 6 ships. They're going to destroy Earth completely. How long until they fire? 15 minutes. Maybe less. Kung Su felt his heart sink. They had fought so hard, sacrificed so much, and it still wasn't enough. The Valdris would destroy Earth out of spite just to deny humanity its victory. He looked at the tactical display, calculating distances and firepower. There was no way to destroy 6 dreadnoughts in 15 minutes. It was impossible. Admiral Taeyong's voice came over the communicator. I can see the dreadnoughts from my position. They're the most heavily defended ships in the fleet. We'll need everything we have left to take them down. We don't have everything, Kyunsu said quietly. We barely have anything. Then we use what we have. Every ship. Every weapon. Every person. We throw everything at those 6 ships and pray it's enough. Kyunsu closed his eyes for a moment. He thought about his wife, who died in the old wars. He thought about the world he helped build after humanity finally stopped fighting itself. He thought about the children playing in parks, and the artists making beautiful things, and the scientists reaching for the stars. All of it would be ash in 15 minutes unless they could stop those weapons. He opened his eyes, and his voice was steady. All ships, all stations, all personnel. This is Admiral Kung Su. We have 1 mission left. 6 enemy dreadnoughts are preparing to destroy Earth. We will stop them. I don't care what it costs. I don't care what it takes. Those weapons do not fire. Every available ship will assault the dreadnoughts immediately. If your weapons are empty, ram them. If your engines are dead, use them as bombs. We are the last line of defense. Behind us is home. We hold or we die. There is no other option. All ships attack now. Across the fleet, battered and bleeding ships turned toward the 6 dreadnoughts. Pilots with no ammunition left aimed their fighters at the massive vessels. Stations that could barely fly engaged their failing engines. It was humanity's last desperate charge, and everyone knew that most of them would not survive. The countdown continued. 14 minutes until Earth died. 13 minutes. 12 minutes, and somewhere in the void, hidden in his escape pod, Bior's companion pilot named Hien Wu saw something. The dreadnoughts were so large and so powerful that they had only minimal close-range defenses. They were designed to destroy planets from a distance, not to fight off small craft up close. He checked his pod's limited fuel. He could make it to one of the dreadnoughts. He could try to damage it from the inside. It was insane. It was impossible. It was their only chance. Pilot Hien Wu had lost everything in the first attack. His wife and daughter were in Seoul when a Valdris missile broke through the planetary defenses. The entire district was gone in a flash of light. He had volunteered for Sung Ho's suicide mission not because he was brave, but because he had nothing left to lose. Now, drifting in his tiny escape pod toward a dreadnought the size of a city, found something new to fight for: revenge. His pod attached to the dreadnought's hull with magnetic clamps. The alien ship's armor was thick, but there were maintenance hatches for external repairs. Hyun-woo pulled a plasma cutter from his emergency kit and began cutting through the hatch. It took 3 minutes. 3 minutes closer to Earth's death. He didn't think about that. He just cut. The hatch fell away and Hyun-woo pulled himself into the alien ship. The interior was dark and filled with a strange purple mist that the Valdris breathed. His suit's air supply would last maybe an hour. He activated his helmet's navigation system, looking for the reactor or weapons control, but the layout made no sense. Alien architecture based on alien thinking. Then Bora's voice crackled in his ear. Hyun-woo, I can see you're inside. I'm hacking their internal sensors to guide you. Follow my directions. We're going after the weapons control center. How much time do we have? 10 minutes. Maybe 9. Don't think about it. Just run. Back in the main battle, Captain Yoonji commanded a defense station that was falling apart. Hull breaches on every level. Life support failing. Weapons offline. Her crew of 300 had been reduced to 20 survivors. But the station's reactor was still intact, and reactors could do more than just make power. They could make explosions. Everyone off the station, Yoonji ordered. Get to the escape pods now, her second in command. A young officer named Junyo grabbed her arm. Captain, what are you doing? Buying time. That dreadnought is 2 kilometers away. I can turn this station into the biggest bomb we've ever made. Now go. That's an order. Junho wanted to argue, but he saw the look in her eyes. He saluted and left with the others. Yoonji watched them go, then locked herself in the reactor control room. She began overriding every safety system, pushing the reactor past its limits. The temperature gauges turned red. Warning alarms screamed. The whole station began to shake. She aimed the station at the nearest dreadnought and fired the maneuvering thrusters. The massive structure slowly accelerated, picking up speed. The Valdris saw it coming and opened fire. But Yoonji had angled the approach to use the station's thickest armor as a shield. Explosions tore through the lower decks, but the reactor kept building power, getting hotter and more unstable. For Earth, Yoonji whispered, and she pushed the reactor into critical overload. The explosion was like a small sun being born. The defense station vaporized instantly, and the shockwaves slammed into the dreadnought's side. The massive ship's shields held for exactly 2 seconds, then failed. The explosion tore a kilometer-wide hole in the dreadnought's armor. The ship listed to one side, its structural integrity compromised. 1 dreadnought damaged. 5 to go. Captain Donghain's cruiser was dying. The ship had taken so many hits that it was more holes than whole. His crew was dead. His engines were sputtering on reserve power. He had no weapons left, but he could still steer. He aimed his ship at another dreadnought and locked the course. Then he went to the cargo bay, where they kept the ship's emergency reactor core. It was meant to power the ship if the main reactor failed. Donghain had a different use for it. He set the core to overload, then went back to the bridge and strapped himself into the captain's chair. His ship picked up speed, heading straight for the dreadnought. The aliens tried to shoot him down, but his ship was already so damaged that it barely showed up on their sensors. The cruiser hit the dreadnought's shields at full speed. The impact destroyed what was left of the cruiser, and Donghain died instantly. But the emergency core he had set to overload detonated a microsecond later. The concentrated explosion punched through the shields and destroyed the dreadnought's main weapons array. The planet cracker weapon went dark, unable to fire. 2 dreadnoughts neutralized. 4 to go. 6 minutes remaining, inside the first dreadnought. Hyun-woo followed Bior's directions through the alien corridors. He encountered a Valdris warrior, one of the 4-armed soldiers that guarded the ship. The alien was larger and stronger, but Hyun-woo was desperate and angry. He shot the warrior 3 times with his sidearm. The alien fell, purple blood spreading across the floor. Left turn ahead, Biora said. The weapons control is 2 levels up. There's a maintenance shaft you can use. Haiyan-Wu climbed the shaft, his muscles burning. He emerged into a massive chamber filled with alien computers and control systems. In the center of the room was a pillar of energy, pulsing with power. The Planet Cracker Weapons Control Core. Out here, Haiyan-Wu said. Now what? Hold on, I need to analyze the system. Biora's voice was tight with stress. She was working on problems that would take a team of scientists months to solve, and she had minutes. Okay, I think I can do this. There's a feedback loop in their weapons system. If we can access it through the network, we can overload all 6 weapons at once. But it requires a direct physical connection to the control core. What happens if I make that connection? Biora was silent for a moment. Then, the energy discharge will kill you instantly. I'm sorry, there's no other way. Haiyan-Wu looked at the pulsing energy core. He thought about his wife's smile, his daughter's laugh, the life he had lost. It's okay. I'll see them soon. Just make sure it works. Make sure Earth survives, I promise. When you make the connection, I'll upload the virus directly through you. It will spread to all 6 dreadnoughts. The weapons will overload and destroy themselves. Haiyan-Wu pulled out the interface cable from his suit. His hands were shaking, but not from fear. From anticipation. He thought it was fitting that the same network that made the Valdres strong would be their downfall. Humanity had learned to turn strength into weakness. It was what made them survivors. Outside the dreadnought, the remaining human ships pressed their attack. Pilot Sung-Mi's fighter squadron dove through a storm of fire, their missiles streaking toward a dreadnought's shield generators. Captain Menesio's destroyer, barely holding together, rammed its bow into another dreadnought's weapons array. Ships exploded. People died. But they bought seconds and minutes for Haiyan-Wu, for minutes until the weapons fired. 3 minutes, Biora, Haiyan-Wu said. Tell Earth that we didn't surrender? Tell them we fought until the end. I will. You're a hero, Haiyan-Wu. No. I'm just a man who lost everything and wants to make it mean something. Do it now, before I lose my nerve. He jammed the cable into the energy core. For a split second, he felt the full power of the Planet Cracker weapon flowing through his body. It was like touching a star. Every nerve in his body exploded with pain and light. He screamed, but the sound never left his throat. Bora uploaded the virus through the connection. It raced through the Valdres network at the speed of light. Jumping from dreadnought to dreadnought, burrowing into the control systems of all 6 Planet Cracker weapons, it found the feedback loop, the one design flaw in an otherwise perfect weapon system. And it exploited it mercilessly. The weapons began to overload. Energy that was meant to tear apart a planet's core was instead contained in the weapons themselves. The pressure built. The systems tried to compensate, but the virus wouldn't let them. More pressure, more heat, more power building with nowhere to go. Haiyan-Wu's body was already dead, nothing but ash and shadow. But the virus kept working, kept executing its code. Dr. Ji-Wan, watching from Earth, saw the energy readings spike across all 6 dreadnoughts. It's working, she breathed. It's actually working. The first dreadnought exploded from the inside. The Planet Cracker weapon detonated with the force that was meant to destroy Earth. But instead it destroyed the ship carrying it. The second dreadnought went next. Then the third and fourth simultaneously. The fifth lasted 10 seconds longer before its containment failed. The sixth and final dreadnought tried to eject its weapon, but it was too late. The explosion consumed the massive ship. 6 mini-suns blazed in the void. The light was so bright that people on Earth could see it even through the daylight. When the glare faded, the 6 dreadnoughts were gone. Nothing remained but expanding clouds of vaporized metal and energy. On his flagship, Warlord Thaxron stared at the tactical display in disbelief. All 6 weapons destroyed. Impossible. The primitive humans couldn't have done this. But they had. They had taken his technology and turned it against him. They had sacrificed themselves in ways he couldn't comprehend. They had shown a determination that the Valdres, despite all their power, had never faced before. And for the first time in his long career of conquest, Thaxrin felt something crack inside his certainty. Maybe these humans were different. Maybe they really were too dangerous to fight, but his pride wouldn't let him admit it. Not yet. All ships, he ordered, his voice cold with rage. Full assault. I want every human ship destroyed. I want their planet bombed until nothing lives. They have humiliated the Valdris Empire for the last time. Show them what happens when they defy us. The remaining Valdris fleet, still numbering in the thousands, turned as one toward Earth. The battle was far from over, but the humans had saved their planet from instant death. Now, they had to survive the storm of vengeance that was coming. Admiral Kung Su counted his remaining forces. 43 ships still combat. Against several thousand, the math was impossible. But then, it had always been impossible. All ships formed defensive sphere around Earth. They want our world? They'll have to go through us to get it. The final battle was about to begin. The 43 surviving human ships formed a defensive sphere around Earth. They were battered and broken, held together by emergency welds and sheer determination. Captain Taeyong looked at his tactical display and counted the Valdris ships moving toward them. 4,000. Maybe 5,000. He stopped counting. The numbers didn't matter anymore. All ships, this is Taeyong. We are the line. Behind us is our home. We hold here or we die here. There is no retreat. There is no surrender. Make every shot count. Make them pay for every meter they take. The Valdris fleet came in waves, learning from their earlier mistakes. They didn't use their automated systems anymore. They flew in tight formations that supported each other. They were adapting to fight humanity's chaotic tactics. But humanity was adapting too. Captain Minisio's destroyer had lost its main engines and most of its weapons. But it could still move using maneuvering thrusters, and it still had one missile left. She waited until a Valdris cruiser came close, then fired the missile at point-blank range. The explosion took out the enemy ship and damaged 3 others. Then she used her thrusters to push her destroyed ship into the path of incoming fire, using it as a shield for the other human vessels. She and her crew died, but they saved 2 other ships. On Earth, civilian engineer Junki finished repairing the old defense batteries he had found. They were 50-year-old technology, obsolete and forgotten. But they still worked. He aimed them at the Valdris ships breaking through the orbital defense line and opened fire. The ancient weapons surprised a Valdris squadron that wasn't expecting ground fire. 3 ships exploded. The others quickly destroyed Junki's position, but he had proven something important. Earth itself was armed. The planet was fighting back. Then something unexpected happened. The virus that Dr. Juwan had planted in the Valdris network began to evolve. It had been designed to cause confusion and chaos. But as it spread and replicated through thousands of ships, it started to do something. More, it began to take control of damaged Valdris vessels, ships that had been disabled earlier in the battle. Their automated systems came back online, but not under Valdris control. Under the virus's control, Dr. Juwan watched in amazement as her creation became something new. Admiral, I'm detecting over 300 Valdris ships reactivating, but they're not responding to enemy commands. I think the virus has created a ghost fleet. Can you control them? Kung Su asked. Not directly, but I can give them basic commands. Attack enemy ships. Defend human vessels. Simple instructions. Do it. Turn their own fleet against them. The ghost ships awakened across the battlefield. They were damaged and barely functional, but they were armed and they were angry. Or at least the virus controlling them was angry in the way that code could be angry. Following the hatred and determination that Dr. Jiwan had accidentally programmed into it, the ghost ships turned on their former comrades. Valdris crews watched in horror as their own vessels attacked them. Captain Taeyong realized this was his chance. The Valdris were fighting on 2 fronts now, against the human ships and against their own ghost fleet. All ships coordinate with the ghost vessels. Use them to create openings in the enemy formation. The tide of battle shifted again. It was still impossible odds, but impossible was becoming humanity's specialty. Human ships danced between the ghost vessels, using them as mobile cover. The Valdris tried to destroy the ghost ships. That meant taking their attention away from the human ships, which would then strike at their vulnerable flanks. It was chaos, but it was controlled chaos. Human chaos. The kind of fighting that made no sense to an organized military mind but worked anyway. Warlord Thaxran stood on his bridge, watching his fleet being torn apart by primitives and their own corrupted vessels. His officers looked at him, waiting for orders, but he had none. Every tactic he tried, the humans countered. Every advantage he had, they found a way to neutralize. These creatures were impossible. They should have been easy to defeat. They should have surrendered hours ago, but they didn't surrender. They never surrendered. They just kept fighting and dying and somehow still winning, Captain. Tae Young made a decision that was either brilliant or insane. He broadcast a message directly to Warlord Thaxran's flagship. Warlord, I challenge you to single combat. Your ship against mine. Winner takes all. If you defeat me, Earth surrenders. If I defeat you, your fleet leaves our system. It was a complete bluff. Humanity had no tradition of single combat to decide wars. But Taeyong had studied the Valdris culture. They had honor codes. They had traditions about single combat between leaders. He was gambling that Thaxran would accept out of pride or desperation. On the Valdris flagship, Thaxran's officers urged him to refuse. It's obviously a trap, Warlord. Don't accept. But Thaxran saw it differently. His fleet was being destroyed. His reputation was in ruins. The other Valdris warlords would hear about this defeat. Unless he could salvage something. Unless he could kill the human leader in honorable combat and restore his honor. And even if the humans didn't honor the agreement, at least he would have killed the one who humiliated him. I accept, Thaxran transmitted. My flagship against yours? No interference from other ships. We end this now. The two fleets pulled back, creating a clear space in the middle of the battlefield. Taeyong's command station Horizon Shield moved to face the massive Valdris flagship. It was like a mouse challenging a tiger. The Valdris ship was 5 times larger, with weapons that could crack moons. Taeyong's station was designed for defense, not ship-to-ship combat. But he had a plan. He had studied every scrap of data from the battle. He knew how Valdris ships moved, how they fought, how they thought. They valued overwhelming power. They would come straight at him with maximum force, expecting to crush him quickly. So he would use their own momentum against them. The two ships engaged. Thaxran opened fire with everything he had. Energy beams and missiles streaked toward Horizon's shield. Taeyong didn't try to tank the damage. Instead, he used Earth's moon. He positioned his station so the moon's gravity would slingshot him around at high speed, making him a difficult target. The Valdris weapons hit the moon instead, blasting craters into its surface, but missing Taeyong's ship as Taeyong whipped around the moon. He launched everything he had at a single point on the Valdris flagship's shield. Not trying to destroy it, just trying to create a temporary weak spot. The concentrated fire worked. The shield flickered for just a moment. In that moment, Taeyong fired his secret weapon. Back on Earth, thousands of engineers had been working on repairing the planetary defense cannon, a massive railgun built into the surface that was designed to destroy asteroids. It hadn't worked in years. But engineer Junki and his team had sacrificed everything to fix it. They had died when Valdris bombers destroyed the facility. But before they died, they had completed the repairs. The cannon fired. A tungsten slug the size of a bus accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. It crossed the distance from Earth to the Valdris flagship in seconds. It hit the exact spot where Taeyong had weakened the shields. The slug punched through the armor, through the internal structure, through the reactor core, and out the other side of the ship. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Valdris flagship began to come apart. The reactor containment failed. Explosions rippled through the massive vessel. Warlord Thaxran had time for one final thought. These humans were never primitive. They were predators who had learned to look weak. Then the flagship exploded, taking the warlord with it. The Valdris fleet suddenly found itself without its commander. Confusion spread through their ranks. Some captains wanted to continue fighting. Others wanted to retreat. Arguments broke out on command channels. The perfect unity of the Valdris military machine cracked. Admiral Kung Su saw the moment and seized it. All ships, full offensive, break them now while they're confused. The 43 human ships, the Ghost Fleet, and every remaining defense platform opened fire simultaneously. The Valdris fleet, already battered and demoralized, began to break apart. Ships started to retreat. First a few, then dozens, then hundreds. The retreat became a rout. The mighty Valdris Armada, which had conquered hundreds of worlds, was running away from Earth. Bo-Ra, still hidden in her escape pod, watched the enemy fleet jumping too faster than light speed. They were fleeing. Humanity had won. She started laughing and crying at the same time. They had actually won, but the cost was terrible. Of Earth's 340 warships, only 29 survived. Over 800,000 military personnel were dead. The orbital space around Earth was a graveyard. Entire cities had been bombed. The moon's surface was scarred with craters. The victory was real. It was written in blood and sacrifice. Admiral Kung Su sat in his command center looking at the casualty reports. So many names. So many heroes who would never come home. He thought about Captain Yunji, who turned her station into a bomb. About Captain Dong Hyen, who rammed his dying ship into the enemy. About Lieutenant Sung Ho and pilot Hyen Wu, who sacrificed themselves to upload the virus. About thousands of others whose names he would never know, but who had given everything for Earth. Then Dr. Giwan ran into his office, her face flushed with excitement. "Admiral, you need to see this. When we hacked the Valdris network, I downloaded everything. Their star charts, their military installations, their technology. Their empire has dozens of major bases and hundreds of occupied worlds. And now we know where every single one of them is." Kyung Soo looked at the data spreading across his screen. The Valdris Empire was vast and powerful. They would regroup. They would come back for revenge. But now, humanity had something they didn't have before. Knowledge, time, and the absolute certainty that they could win. "Start building new ships," Kung Su ordered. "Use the Valdris technology we captured. Design them better than before. We're not waiting for them to attack again. This time, we're taking the fight to them." 3 months later, a memorial was unveiled in Geneva. It was a massive wall covered with names. Every person who died defending Earth. At the top of the wall, carved in letters that could be seen from orbit, were the words, "We are the line." Schools taught the battle to children. Engineers studied the tactics. Scientists worked day and night reverse engineering Valdris technology. Earth's shipyards, rebuilt and expanded, worked around the clock, building a new fleet. But these weren't just defensive ships. These were warships designed to carry the fight to the enemy. Dr. Guan led the research effort. She had become humanity's expert on alien technology. She took what the Valdris had built and made it better. Faster ships, stronger weapons, better shields. And most importantly, she created new computer viruses, each one more sophisticated than the last. She was building an arsenal of digital weapons that could tear apart any networked fleet. Captain Tae Yang, now promoted to admiral, oversaw the training of new pilots and crews. He taught them the lessons learned in the battle. Never fight fair. Use every advantage. Turn the enemy's strength into weakness. And never, ever surrender. 1 year after the battle, the first of Earth's new warships launched. It was called the Sung Ho, named after the pilot who had